In this video, we're going to talk about marking up your mistakes. Making mistakes as a voiceover is sadly somewhat inevitable during the recording process. It comes with the territory. Even the best of us are going to be misspeaking, and misspeaking sometimes quite regularly if the text itself is quite complex or we're just a bit tired. So, in order to be able to streamline the process as much as possible and be time efficient, we really need to think about how we approach this. Generally, when I started out, for every 1 minute of audio that I recorded, I would spend 3, 4 or even 5 minutes actually editing it so that it was broadcast ready. So when we think about streamlining this editing process so that we can pick up our little mistakes as quickly and hopefully painlessly as possible, one thing to really bear in mind is engaging your eyes as opposed to just your ears. So as you spend more time in front of your DAW, your editing software, and I use Adobe Audition as an example, you will cultivate a sensitivity to what these various misspeaks look like in terms of the actual waveform. Obviously, you will cultivate a growing sensitivity towards plosives, to sibilance, to mouth noise, all of these things which are the bane of any voiceover actor's existence, but as well as that, you'll actually be able to see them visually. And this is really advantageous for you in terms of picking up your mistakes, because it's actually much quicker to sweep an entire waveform visually and see these things rather than listening to the entire recording in order to hear them instead and then mark them up. So if we then apply that logic to a system of being able to pick up the changes and edits that you need to make as quickly as possible, it seems quite logical that if there was a particular sound that you could make to spike the waveform in an unusual way, you'd immediately be able to see that mistake and be able to address it immediately, rather than ploughing through all of the recording every single time that you needed to make a change, which is quite important. Now, a lot of voice actors use different methods for this thing. And one technique that a lot of people use is by making a particular noise sound, like a click, that kind of thing. And because it's quite high pitched, it's obviously not how you're normally talking as well, it will show up very easily on a waveform, which can be great and handy. Now, I personally don't use that approach, simply because when I'm narrating any kind of project really, there's a particular vocal tone, pitch and rhythm that I'm trying to maintain, with variety in that, of course, but still I've reached a certain vocal place that I'm delivering from, and if I suddenly go from that place to make an extreme other noise, which has got nothing to do with the style that I'm narrating in, then that can be quite jarring. So it kind of involves alien kind of physical tension for me, which I don't find useful when I actually return to my job of saying the words. So I don't use that personally, but some people do. Other people also use like a dog clicker or something that will make a clicking noise for them, which can be great, especially if you're doing long form work. Booth Junkie in his video on using that for long form narration, I mean, it sounded like a really great way of being able to approach that without exhausting yourself in any way. I personally, again, don't use that, because I would, first of all, almost certainly lose it, and secondly, just because I like using my hands as much as possible. I like the freedom of being able to do that. So if I suddenly had a clicker or something else in my hand that I had to kind of use every time I made a mistake, I know that it would be problematic for me, shall we say. So in terms of my system, I just use the old-fashioned click sound. So every time I make an error or mistake, I take a beat, I click, that spikes the waveform as a result, which draws my eye to it. I take a beat, and then I simply pick up from a comfortable place, usually at the beginning of a thought or a sentence at the very least, sometimes going all the way back to the paragraph. And what that means is that when I'm actually doing my editing, I will have all these spikes, which will draw my attention immediately to that. I'll know to just kind of go to the little waveform before that to listen in, and then be able to just immediately delete the mistake that I've made as quickly as possible. Now, you may not think that this is particularly revelatory, you may be doing it yourself, or you may just think, well, that's not really going to add up much over time. But in the spirit of embracing marginal gains, it really, really is. Certainly when I was starting out, and still 2 or 3 years into my career, it was a real struggle to do my editing. That was the thing that I hated doing most of all. And so being able to have a short, repeatable system that I could use and fall back on that I completely understand was invaluable to me. It just gave me structure. If you have your own system for marking up mistakes that I haven't mentioned here, then please do drop it in the comments below, because I'd be really interested to steal your ideas. I hope you found this video of interest. Thanks so much for watching. Please do like, subscribe and all that jazz, and I look forward to seeing you next time.